Right now, in southern Japan, the ground itself has physically moved, not shaken, moved. Survey stations across Kumamoto Prefecture have recorded the Earth shifting as much as 0.84 meters, nearly 3 feet, in a single direction, after a major earthquake tore through a fault system that last ruptured a decade ago in one of the deadliest disasters in recent Japanese history. Satellite imagery has already picked up 10 kilometers of visible surface rupture, ground torn open along the fault line, with deformation data suggesting the actual break stretches closer to 30 kilometers beneath the surface. At least 36 people are confirmed dead, and officials are being wary about one specific question: whether this is a genuinely new event or whether it is connected to a fault system Japan has been watching closely since 2016. This is the story of exactly what shifted, what the ground data actually tells scientists, and what a moment like this means both for the region it just hit and for how earthquake risk gets understood more broadly. No hype, no exaggeration, just what actually happened, and what the data behind it means. Drop a comment and tell me if you have ever felt a major earthquake yourself, because I read every one of these. If you want grounded science coverage instead of panic headlines, subscribe, it is free, and a like helps this reach people who need to understand this. Let us go for 5,000 likes on this one. Thank you. Now let us get into it. At 27 minutes past 4 in the afternoon local time on the 28th of July, an earthquake struck Kumamoto Prefecture on Japan's southern island of Kyushu, centered a few kilometers east of the coastal city of Uto. The Japan Meteorological Agency's preliminary reading placed the magnitude at 7.1, while the United States Geological Survey's independent moment magnitude calculation put it at 6.8, a difference that reflects two different scientific methods measuring the same event, rather than any real disagreement about its severity. The shaking reached Shindo 7, the maximum level on Japan's seismic intensity scale, in Uki and Hikawa town, with Shindo 6 upper, one step below that maximum, recorded across Kumamoto City itself, along with Yatsushiro, Uto, Misato, and Mashiki. A tsunami advisory covering the Ariake and Yatsushiro seas was issued within 2 minutes of the quake, and roughly an hour and 40 minutes later, once it became clear the wave threat had passed. Here is the part that gives this story its title, and it is worth being precise about what actually happened underground, rather than just how hard the shaking felt. Kyushu sits above the boundary where the Philippine sea plate dives beneath the Eurasian plate, a subduction zone capable of producing enormous, deep earthquakes. But this was not a deep subduction event. It was a shallow, crustal earthquake, meaning the rupture occurred at a depth of roughly 10 to 16 kilometers, well within the upper crust, rather down at the plate boundary itself, the same broad category of earthquake responsible for the 2016 disaster in the same region. This earthquake was specifically a strike slip event, meaning two blocks of the Earth's crust suddenly slid sideways past each other along a nearly vertical fault plane, rather than one block thrusting up and over another, the way a subduction zone earthquake typically works. The fault responsible sits within the Futagawa-Hinagu fault zone, specifically identified by Japanese authorities as involving the Hinagu fault, part of a broader system that forks off Japan's longest active fault line, the Japan Median Tectonic Line, at a junction geologists call the Beppu-Hanayama fault zone. Survey stations run by Japan's Geospatial Information Authority recorded the physical result of that slip directly. In Yatsushiro, a specific reference point known as Sencho, was displaced 0.84 meters, about 2 feet 9 inches to the northeast. A separate station in Izumi recorded a shift of 0.17 meters, roughly 6.5 inches to the south. And a station in Kumamoto's Jonan area recorded 0.4 meters, about 1 foot 4 inches, of displacement to the north. Those numbers are not estimates of shaking intensity. They are direct, surveyed measurements of the ground itself, sitting in a different physical location than it did before the earthquake struck. Satellite analysis conducted by Japanese broadcaster and NHK found roughly 10 kilometers, about 6.2 miles, of surface rupture visible on the ground itself between the towns of Hikawa and Yatsushiro, places where the fault's movement actually broke through to the surface rather than staying hidden underground. Geologist Shinji Toda of Tohoku University cautioned that this visible rupture represents only where the break happened to reach the surface, not the fault's full extent, since a significant portion of any rupture like this typically stays buried. Based on crustal deformation data across the wider region, scientists now estimate the actual rupture length at closer to 30 kilometers, nearly 19 miles, roughly 3 times longer than what satellite imagery alone was able to directly confirm. That slip along the Hinagu fault also produced surface ruptures that directly damaged infrastructure sitting on top of it, including roads, bridges, and buildings. And in the town of Ogawa, in Uki, the fault slip caused vertical ground displacement that tore directly through an urbanized area, with a surface rupture propagating underneath a highway viaduct near the junction of the Kyushu and South Kyushu expressways. The human and structural toll from that shaking has continued climbing in the days since. As of 7:30 in the morning on the 1st of August, Kumamoto's Prefectural Disaster Response Headquarters confirmed 36 deaths, with search and rescue operations continuing at several sites. A partial structural collapse trapped people inside, prompting an urgent rescue effort. A chimney collapsed at the Nippon Paper Industries mill in Yatsushiro. Roads and bridges were severed across the region, sections of the Kyushu Expressway itself split open, and water and electricity service was disrupted for large numbers of residents. Approximately 3,600 military personnel have been deployed to support search, rescue, and recovery operations across the affected prefecture, working alongside police and fire crews in Yatsushiro and Kashima as they continue searching for people still believed to be missing. Travel across southern Japan has also been significantly disrupted, with rail, road, and air networks all affected in the days following the quake, and travel advisories, warning of continued volatility in flight and train schedules through the remainder of the week as aftershocks keep testing already weakened structures. This earthquake has also revived memories of a genuinely traumatic chapter in the region's recent history, and it is worth explaining that connection honestly, rather than either overstating or dismissing it. In April of 2016, a pair of earthquakes, a magnitude 6.2 foreshock followed by a magnitude 7 main shock, struck almost the same general area, killing at least 50 people directly and more than 270 in total once disaster-related deaths were included, while badly damaging Kumamoto Castle, one of Japan's most celebrated historic fortresses, which has remained under reconstruction ever since. This latest earthquake toppled sections of the castle's stone walls once. Again, a full decade into that ongoing repair effort. A town hall official in nearby Mifune told the Associated Press the shaking reminded her directly of the 2016 quake, and that she was frightened. But officials have been careful and specific about one point. The 2026 epicenter sits southwest of the main source area of the 2016 sequence. And authorities have stated it is too early to describe this earthquake as a simple continuation or repeat of that earlier disaster. A more reliable conclusion, according to the agencies studying it, will require further of aftershocks, fault movement, and crustal deformation data, before scientists can confidently say whether and how this event connects to the stress left behind by 2016. That aftershock risk is not a minor footnote. It is the most immediate practical concern for anyone in the region right now. The Japan Meteorological Agency identified the 2 to 3 days immediately following the main shock as the period of highest risk for significant aftershocks, while broader travel guidance has warned that elevated aftershock risk is likely to persist for at least a week. That kind of warning reflects a well-established pattern in earthquake science. A major rupture redistributes stress along the surrounding fault network rather than simply releasing it, meaning nearby fault segments and even other faults sharing the same broader system can be pushed measurably closer to their own breaking point. By the earthquake that just occurred, exactly the of stress transfer, scientists are now working to map out across the Futagawa-Hinagu system in the aftermath of this event. It is exactly this kind of stress redistribution analysis, comparing where a rupture actually occurred against the surrounding fault network, that will ultimately determine whether this earthquake turns out to be its own isolated event or part of a longer running sequence tied to the same system responsible for 2016. So what does all of this actually mean, both for the people living through it right now and for anyone trying to understand what a headline like a fault line shifting is actually describing? It means the phrase is not a metaphor. Survey instruments recorded the ground at specific, named locations sitting in a measurably different position after the earthquake than before it. A direct physical record of the same slip that produced the shaking, the surface rupture, and the damage. It means aftershock warnings following an event like this deserve to be taken as seriously as the original earthquake itself, since the elevated risk window identified by the Japan Meteorological Agency reflects a genuine, well-understood mechanism, redistributed stress along the surrounding fault network rather than simple caution. And it means treating the connection to 2016 with the same care Japanese scientists themselves are applying, a genuinely useful historical reference point for understanding the region's seismic character, but not yet a confirmed link that should be assumed before the actual aftershock and deformation data comes in. The honest, grounded summary is this: a magnitude 6.8 to 7.1 earthquake struck Kumamoto Prefecture on the 28th of July, a strike slip rupture along the Hinagu Fault that produced measured ground displacement of up to 0.84 meters at surveyed points across the region, alongside roughly 10 kilometers of visible surface rupture, and a broader estimated rupture length near 30 kilometers. At least 36 people have died, with search and rescue operations continuing at multiple collapse sites. And the Japan Meteorological Agency has flagged an elevated aftershock risk continuing for at least a week. The earthquake struck within the same broader fault system responsible for the deadly 2016 Kumamoto disaster, damaging the same historic castle still under repair from that earlier event, though officials say it remains too early to confirm exactly how or whether the two events are directly connected. We are going to keep tracking this as recovery and aftershock data continues to come in, sourced the same way we did today, straight from the Japan Meteorological Agency, Japan's Geospatial Information Authority, and the geologists actually studying this fault system, not recycled headlines. Subscribe so you do not miss the next update, because based on the current aftershock risk window, this story is very likely not finished yet. And leave that comment below. Tell me if you have ever experienced a major earthquake yourself, because behind one of these numbers is a rescue crew working through the night at a partially collapsed shopping mall in Kashima, a survey technician confirming that a fixed point of ground in Yatsushiro now sits nearly 3 feet from where it stood a week ago, and a research team right now mapping stress across a fault network that a decade ago produced one of the deadliest earthquakes in Japan's recent history. 5,000 likes on this one. Let us go. See you in the next one.